Stress and health, a summary of the effect of stress on your body's function. For many years, scientists have debated whether or not stress could affect a person's body. Early scientists believed that, well, of course it can. William Osler, a Canadian physician, thought that stress caused rheumatoid arthritis. Modern scientists, however, disagree with this. To look into the relationships between stress and health, let's look into the physiology of stress. First, some definitions. A stressor is any type of threat, either real or imagined. Stress is your body's internal responses to these stressors. There are three components to stress: the event, or the stressor, the processing system that experiences and interprets the meaning of the stressor, and the stress response, which is how we react to the stress. Let's look at an example. Okay, so now what? How does stress work? Well, stress mainly deals with three types of tissues and organs. It deals with the hormonal system, the immune system, and the intestinal lining of our digestive system. So say that a threat or a stressor is detected, for example, a needle. So then a signal is sent to the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Let's just call it the HPA axis. So the HPA axis receives a signal and causes the hypothalamus to release corticotropin-releasing hormones to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland then makes adrenal corticotropic hormone, which is passed to the adrenal cortex, which makes corticoid hormones. Cortisol, the most important stress hormone, is a corticoid. The cortisol then reduces immune system activity to keep it within safe boundaries. This, though, is only half the story. At the same time the hypothalamus is making CRH, the hypothalamus also sends a signal to the sympathetic nervous system, to the medulla, to produce adrenaline. Adrenaline causes our energy to be diverted to the organs involved in the fight or flight reaction. Still with me? Good. Before we get stressed out by any more biology, let's take a break and go back to stress. There are two major types of stress: acute and chronic stress. Acute stress is short-term stress. It's temporary and relatively simple to solve. Chronic or long-term stress, however, is more difficult to deal with. Where acute stress can be a good motivator, chronic stress just wreaks havoc on your health. So why exactly is it that only chronic stress is a problem? Basically, the stressor in acute stresses go away quickly, and cortisol stops being produced in such large amounts. Once this happens, everything goes back to normal. For chronic stress, however, the threat is continuously detected, and more cortisol is produced, and the body system goes haywire. Not only does cortisol thin your bones, but it also destroys the lining of your digestive tract, causing all sorts of problems. Not convinced? Then it's time to look at Sapolsky. In 1982, Robert Sapolsky went to Kenya and observed a population of olive baboons. Sapolsky took blood samples from the baboons at different levels of the social hierarchy and found lower cortisol levels in the blood of higher-ranking baboons. In 1991, Marmot conducted a study in Whitehall. Using questionnaires and electrocardiograms, Marmot found that lower-ranking civil servants ranked themselves as more stressed, engaged in more health risk behaviors, and suffered from more illnesses. From this and various other studies, we can conclude that stress really does affect health. So then, what causes stress? Well, life-threatening things like, watching a shark try to eat you can be stressful, but there are other things too. Although it varies for everyone, psychological stress has been shown to be the most difficult for people to deal with, either because we don't know what's there, or we simply don't know how to handle it. Emotional stress has been found to be a huge stressor, although certain types, like rumination, have been found to be especially stressful. So, who are the victims? Emotionally repressed people who don't speak up and respond to their own needs will often become chronically stressed because their own needs aren't taken care of. Their cortisol levels then build up. Because these people don't take care of their bodies often continue their breakdown long before the person even realizes that something's wrong. The emotional repression of these individuals begin in childhood. Some of the problems caused by emotional repression include amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, breast cancer, lung disease, and all rheumatic diseases. The victims of these diseases often come from unhappy homes with little to no loving parent-child interactions. These victims are often described as nurturing and kind. In fact, it's been found that these victims often transfer their attention away from their own needs to tend to those of others. So how do we prevent ourselves from letting stress take over our lives? You can build up your self-confidence and your self-esteem. Although this doesn't seem like much, there was a case where a scientist managed to overcome ALS simply by learning to love her body unconditionally. It has been hypothesized that by learning to accept herself and her own needs, her body stopped producing stress hormones and the disease simply faded away. Another thing you can do is to have a positive support network. It has been found that individuals with a solid support network have happier and healthier lives. Finally, you could follow Matte's 7 A's of healing. These A's are acceptance, where you recognize and accept the situation as it is. Awareness, where you become aware of your own repressed emotions. Anger, where you allow yourself to get angry at times and let out your emotions. Autonomy, where you find your own identity. Attachment, where you form healthy relationships and support networks. And finally, assertion, where you make yourself heard. Oh, and there's another one, affirmation, where you learn to love yourself and create positive goals. Thank you for listening and have a stress-free day.